Welcome back to the Don's Table. Today we have a special guest. He is, to me, one of the goats of the specialty coffee industry. When I started in this industry, I actually listened to his podcast and still do on pointers on how to be a better manager, how to be a better boss, how to be a better coffee expert, and just how to improve as a coffee professional overall. It's dope. It's an honor. It's really chilling that he's here right now, and I want to welcome Chris Deferio.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming. I wanted to say your last name in Spanish because I'd be like, Deferio, it sounds fire.
I like the way that sounds better. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, thank you for coming, man. You have a lot of great projects, man. Keys to the Shop is a great podcast. You are also a consultant. You're a judge for the latte art competition,
Yes.
and you have so much on your plate, on your resume. Man, like, tell us, how do you get into coffee? How do you get started?
Uh, you know, it was basically just like everybody else. I mean, you just discover coffee
Mhm.
and you find the scene of coffee somehow, like whether it's like the cup itself or the coffee shop. For me, it was the coffee shop. Just I was in a school, I was in a ministry school in the Midwest, and I just didn't have anything to do after that. So I just went to coffee shops all the time. And I just really appreciated everything that came together to kind of form the thing that is the coffee shop experience for the customer, which was me, right? With my, reading philosophy and journaling and listening to the live music. It just kind of wrapped me,
Hmm.
and so I just fell in love with it, but I noticed I could taste the difference in the coffees that they were serving, which were just like really dark roasted coffees. All of them were dark roasted, but in the AirPods, I could taste the difference, and that was interesting to me. And so I started to develop a sort of a fascination with how it all worked, but I didn't know what I was going to do with my life at all. And so one day I just like woke up somehow to this calling of coffee, and I just literally at my desk I said, "That's what I'm going to do." And as simple as that, I just kind of started coffee, and I got a bunch of jobs, small coffee shops. My first job, I got fired from that one. And I was, because I was really passionate, but I was
Hmm.
not very good
Hmm.
at coffee. I was good at loving coffee, not good at serving it, but, but that was fun. But that was in 99, 2000, around there. So it's been about 25 years of just working in small to mid sized coffee shops around the US and really about the Midwest and New York. I'm from Syracuse, New York originally.
Upstate New York in the house.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. The real upstate, I would say. Yeah,
Right, not Yonkers.
yeah, exactly. Right, right. So we oftentimes I look at my career and I think I wish I worked for really big names in coffee so to have it on my resume, like the intelligentsias. I have lots of friends from the early third wave days that did. When we were all involved in competitions, we were all involved in like setting off a lot of things in motion in the industry. It was a really cool time in coffee. Um, but I never did work for the big guns.
Hmm. Hmm.
But now, as a consultant and as a podcaster, I really love that I worked for smaller, just at the cusp of figuring out their systems, figuring out their operations, the gritty stuff. Not that there's not that in the big ones. When you open a shop, it's hard no matter who you are. But I have come to love my resume and my experiences because they just give you a lot of scar tissue, a lot of wisdom, and yeah, I got involved in competitions early. Like it really helped my career to pursue coffee professionally because I went to Coffee Fest in 2004. So you mentioned that I'm a head judge, but I started as a competitor in the latte art competition. And then it wasn't called the Latte Art World Championship Open. It was, I think it was like Mill Rock. They make countertops and
Hmm.
counter cabinets for coffee shops, the Mill Rock Latte Art Competition. We didn't have trophies.
That's crazy.
We just had big novelty checks. That's all
Hmm.
we had, right? But I won my first competition.
Wow.
Uh, we were all about latte art back then when David Schomer started popularizing it on his VHS tape.
Mhm.
When we all kind of passed that around through the mail a little bit to get
That's
inspired.
crazy.
I mean, that's old school stuff, right? So we just practiced and practiced, and compared to what latte artists are doing today, we weren't doing anything nearly that good. But what we were doing was groundbreaking because nobody had done it before, or they were just kind of doing it, but we were exploring the possibilities. And so I went to Coffee Fest in 2004 in DC. I drove myself from Syracuse, or actually Ithaca, New York. I was working at Gimme Coffee at the time. And man, I parked in a rush hour lane in the morning, got my car towed with all my pitchers. I had to run up to the venue, borrow some pitchers, try to get through to the next round. And I did, and I ended up winning. And from there, it was just getting plugged into competition after competition, both latte art and US Barista Championships and things like that. But really, it was about the networking. So while I was working in small shops, kind of testing my own metal, you're also taking in a lot of inspiration from people who are all the way out from California. They're really great baristas from Chicago, in New York, and things like that. So it was just a lot of input and a lot of growth in a short period of time. So that's kind of my career. And these days, I just kind of lean on the lessons I've learned and the things I've seen, and I try to use as much wisdom as I can in producing the shows and talking with guests and helping my clients.
Yeah.
So
Well, you're doing an amazing job. So
thank you.
Your first latte art competition was 2004.
Yes.
I actually migrated to America,
That's
to the
awesome.
United States in 2004. So you've been in coffee as long as I've been in this country, and I've been here 20 years.
That's great.
Thankfully, you know, a lot of great opportunities here. I'm glad my parents brought me here. So that there's that. But so you started that in 2004. What was your first coffee gig?
First coffee gig was about 1999 or so.
I was born 96.
So there you
Puts
go.
it into perspective.
It's, a place called Arcega's in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And I had the owners recently on the show.
Wow.
The owners didn't fire me. The manager did.
Yeah. I'm actually glad you said that, because my next segue was I listened to your stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the lines that I took away from this episode was people don't leave jobs, they leave managers.
It's true.
And I wanted you to get into that because that's such a true thing. I was like, I've never heard somebody put it that way.
Yeah, and it's very true. My first job, like I said, I was really into coffee, but I wasn't very good at the job. And at the time, I thought when they fired me, I was so mad. So I was like seething. Like I couldn't describe to you just how angry I was because I knew the passion that I had in me. Just like when I started the podcast, I told my wife, I said, I'll do this as long as I'm physically able to. I'm not going to just start it and then fade away. But I felt that way about coffee. And so I was like, why can't they see that? But getting fired was one of the best things that ever happened to me because it showed me that you can't just survive on passion alone. You have to have skills to back it up, and you've got to take the knocks that come your way. Was the manager a great manager? No, she wasn't. Did they do a lot of great training? No. I mean, could I have poked holes and be like, well, you didn't do all these things for me? At the time, I did. Now I say I would have fired me too. Right. It may be not in such a spectacular fashion, but it was definitely the right decision. But yeah, management is one of those things that has always fascinated me because you go to these coffee shops and you work in these shops, you build out a space, you collect a menu and you market your concept, and then you essentially kind of shoot from the hip when it comes to the people that you put in the cafe, the baristas and the management staff, mostly because you don't know what you're doing. And that's not a dig on anybody because a lot of people who open a coffee bar, I would say a larger percentage of people who open coffee bars have not worked in coffee before. Right. And the reason is, and this is just my assumption, if you worked in coffee before, you're less likely to open a shop because you know what you're getting into. Right?
Right.
Okay. I mean, you're opening a shop pretty soon.
Yeah.
And it's art. It's really.
Trust me, it took me 5 years of saying, no, I'm never going to open up a shop to then be like, okay,
Yeah.
I guess I'll do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I'll explain to you why in a bit, but go ahead.
But no, that's the thing is the people. So back to when I first was just a customer in a coffee shop, I knew there was all of these variables going into that one singular moment where I get to pick up a cup of coffee and enjoy it. it's the story of the farmer, all the importer, the value chain, but it's also how it's rendered in that little area. And coffee shops are these really cool little momentary spaces. Some of them last hundreds of years. The European shops are around like almost 1,000 years, a couple of them, or I think. And it's not usual. Usually it's just what's needed in the moment for this community right now. And it's a magical thing. It's less magical when there's these toxic elements, when it's just this bid for financial gain, which is kind of foolish for coffee because it's not really like a get rich quick thing.
Yeah, no.
And so Keys to the Shop was something that was born from the idea that there's so much of there's a low barrier to entry to start a coffee shop or a coffee business, which means more people who might not be the best fit for the industry get in the industry. And we don't know better until we work for them or with them, or we find out that we are them, And not that I want to make it hard. I just want to focus on the evergreen values and foundational characteristics of what makes a great culture of leadership, of employees, of what are the basics of coffee that somebody who doesn't want to just be in competition level, just wants to serve great coffee to their community can do so successfully without all of the noise out there in the industry. I mean, we do podcasting. I have a podcast. You have a podcast. There's so many things to listen to.
Right.
And way more than you could ever follow through on.
Yeah.
So you hear something I say, you hear something this person says or whatever. You want to say, okay, I'm going to do that this week. You maybe have room for like 10 things a year to actually apply to your life.
It's a lot of content to be consumed right now.
Yeah, I heard somebody say a phrase. It was procrastinating. So we just like learn as much as we can about something, but we never actually do it. And so there's a balance. Like I want to give a good message. I want the best people to be on the show to give that the lessons that they've learned. But I also want people to not just blindly consume things. Mm-hmm. I want them to actually use what they're taking in. Right. And so, it's kind of a tangent there, but.
No, that was such a good point because I always give people advice. And it's like that, man. It's like, hey, you never, I hate when people ask you for advice and then they don't take it. Yeah. It's like, I just wasted my time and your time, It's like, that really sucks. But I agree in terms of the coffee thing. It's interesting because I actually never wanted to open up a coffee shop. I've always been so anti-coffee shop just because of the things you got to deal with.
Yeah.
Like the pandemic really taught me that if another pandemic happened, God forbid, it would not be great for the industry as a coffee shop level, right? Like people who were roasters or making money because people were consuming at home.
Right.
Home espresso machine manufacturers were like making a killing because everybody wanted to make espressos at home. They're like, oh, I'm not spending on coffee outside of the house. I might as well spend on coffee equipment inside the house.
Yes.
So it was interesting around that time, but I really never wanted to open up a coffee shop. And this is actually the first time that I talk about it publicly. Uh-huh. Because it's just so much that you deal with. You know what I mean? Like I've seen people go through it between employees and people calling out. And like it is tough, but like you said, or on that episode, people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. And to me, it's like I really feel like we have a great company. We have a lot of great values, and we want to provide a lot of great things for the community. And I want to be that person who opens up the opportunity for people. A lot of people get into coffee and they're like, I want to quit my job because I got some money saved up and I want to open up a shop and use the shop as my retirement plan. You don't do it.
No.
Don't do it. You know what I mean? I want to start this business. Why? I want to make money. If money is the initial point of reference and motivation for this, don't do it.
It's a lifestyle business in a lot of ways. You have to be satisfied. Learn how to be satisfied with not as much as you think you should have to prove yourself success. Sometimes people borrow metrics for success from other people and they don't know what metrics are theirs. So they just choose it from you. Like if I said, well, if I'm doing what you're doing, then I'm successful. But somehow it doesn't fit. It's not me. It's not my clothes. It doesn't fit me. So we'd rather borrow from other people than do the hard work and the slower work. Less, the return on that is slower to come to you. finding out who you are. You can say, here's our why. But that's just a phrase until you've lived it for years. And then you understand your why even better, right? And people who open coffee shops it is a really hard slog. And now it's like there's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's a lot on the line. Your brand is on the line. And it's in the hands of other people.
Right.
Which makes people maniacal. You're like, if a barista spills a little bit of milk, they're like, hey, if you do that 100 times a week, you know how much money that costs me per year? You're fired. Like, yeah. They just get super tense because they don't have the long-term view of it. And the other thing about this is that we have an episode that is yet to be recorded, but the idea is your value of being a kind person, a passionate coffee person, having a good cause behind what you do is wonderful, but it's not enough. The first love language that your baristas speak is your competency as an operator of a system that backs up the execution of your values through serving coffee and lattes and cleaning the bathroom often and all the little things in between. Does the table wobble longer than a couple of weeks? Who's fixing it? Is it the customer? Are they folding things 17 times per week to try to fix what you should be noticing? These are the things that people say, okay, you have these values, but if we can't get the basics right, then how are we supposed to graduate to these giant global issues that we say we're about? And that's really where we focus, is let's start with your one shop, especially when it comes to expansion of shops, where people say, I want the one shop. Okay, that's successful because it's open. That doesn't mean it's successful, first of all, because it's open. But they say, well, in order to make more money, I need to have 2 or 3, 4, 10 shops.
Right.
But haven't really explored the depth of that one shop because we're just trying to emulate a model from other larger companies that, again, might not fit who we are. And we haven't actually grown to the level that we need to grow to be the kind of owner that has 10 shops. So if somebody just gave you 10 shops, like the dog that catches the mail truck, what are you going to do with it? You don't even know. You're not the right person.
You have no idea.
Right?
Yep.
So your hard slog, the 5 years, the building the brand and all of this other stuff is part of what makes you the right person to open a coffee shop. If you had started 5 years earlier, or if you ever get it down on yourself, like I wish I would have done it sooner, but this or but that, those things are all in your favor. They are, because you might have made a decision that felt like you were like making it happen and you were hustling and you were just like proud of the entrepreneurial guts that you had. But sometimes the constraints are there to help you make a better decision than the brave ones. Sometimes the brave decision is not the right decision, right? You just have to make an informed decision and a brave decision. So anyway, lots there.
I'm glad you said that, because that's a part of the reason why I waited this long. It's like I've never been a fan of like, oh, I've seen too many people open up too many shops, and then they all feel different. They all taste different. They're all a different vibe. You know what I mean? Like there's too much inconsistencies.
Oh yeah.
And for me, it's like I'm gonna open up one because I've been doing this long enough where people ask me every single day, where can I come and drink a cup of coffee from you guys or from you, and blah, blah, blah. And the hardest part is saying, no, we don't have one. I'm sorry, maybe one day. And I've been saying that for years. And we've been on, many channels. And luckily, we've gotten some traction on social media. And people are like genuinely curious to try Dominican coffee. And it's like, man, like I really wish, come over to my house. Can't do that, right? So it's like, I really wish I had a place to bring that community that I've built. Because I've built a community now, but that community doesn't have a home, right? I send them to like people who have my coffee to their shops, and I can't control that environment. So it's like they're getting whatever that environment's take is from my coffee, right? Like they remix whatever I do and then make it their own.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to open up a space that will be where we can host these people, this community, and stuff like that. And like just like we were chatting earlier, like everybody wants to start at 100. Nobody wants to start from scratch and zero and build it up. And like it's not easy. You know, it's a grind, but I'm excited to open up. It'll be such a grind, man, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, you're going to have a great time, and that's important that you decide that ahead of time. Even if you find that things break or things are not consistent, we have a coaching group. It's kind of like a mastermind group for coffee shop owners called Keyholder Coaching Groups. One of the people there was it's kind of like peer to peer. Owners are helping each other, and we host it, Keys to the Shop. And one of the people had this line. They were helping somebody in the group in their build out. They were worrying about making it right, making it exactly right. And she had done a couple of build outs, and she used the phrase cheap and cheerful. Cheap and cheerful, in the way I interpreted that, the way she meant it was, you're going to do it. It's going to be functional. And how confident and kind of celebratory you are and head up and bright eyed, it is like a kid that hands you a picture that they drew of you and it looks nothing like you. And they're like, I drew this for you. And you're like, oh, honey, oh, you know? And later on, maybe you're going to get better at drawing, but people who love what you do, they're going to love it because of who you are. And by the way, confidence just looks good, even when you're in that learning process where technically, if you're going to compare it to everything you get to make yourself insecure about on Instagram, that, you know, it's not as beautiful as those things, but what's beautiful?
Yeah.
There's some people who try to do like fine dining with down home style food and like say barbecue or something like that. Have you ever been to a fine dining restaurant that does barbecue? It wouldn't work. I have. And it's tasty, but there's something missing. And it's that it doesn't belong in that setting. And you see what I'm saying? Coffee can have a high-end concept, but the hardest thing that people have in these very refined, very perfect concepts is the connection aspect. Because people are just like, whoa.
Right.
You know, I go into a shop. It's like one of my favorite shops in New York is down in the Lower East Side, Abrazo. I don't know if you've ever been there, but I believe the owner's name is Jamie. But that place used to be, I think it was like 200 square feet. 300 square feet.
Crazy.
A couple of stools inside, mostly just people on the stoop. They had amazing baked goods. They made it happen, vertical, do everything, you know. But they moved to a bigger location across the street, I think, and it's still the same vibe as people have told me. I haven't been back, but it was one of my favorite experiences because yeah, there's only room for elbows, and yeah, it's a little stuffy and stuff. It's not a lounge chair, and
Yeah.
but everyone's really happy. They got the music going. It's a vibe. It really feels good, and that's what we want.
Yep.
That's what people want.
Yep.
The belonging. So not the pretense.
Yep.
So.
I like that you said that because earlier I was thinking about these companies getting acquired $600, $700, $900 million, whether they're selling the whole company, they're merging, or they're just selling a piece of the equity. I had a lot of thoughts and a lot of things on my mind when that happened. When you saw that headline, what came to mind for you?
Oh, which particular one was it?
The last one was La Colombe. That was $900 million.
Yeah, oh yeah,
$900 million. Yeah. Yeah.
What comes to mind? Congrats, Todd. I mean, La Colombe. I mean, holy crap.
$900 million is crazy.
Yeah.
Like they should have just threw 100 on top of that. But hey, here's a bill.
It's not something that I think at that point, if you get acquired at that point, you've already built your company out to be sellable.
Right.
The systems are already in place. They wouldn't buy it unless that was true.
Right.
It's not something that depends on the owner's personality. That's one of the key characteristics of being able to sell a business is that it doesn't come with you as the linchpin in the business.
Right.
Right. It's got system structures. It's almost turnkey. So by that time, you either love that brand or you are somebody who says, well, they sold out a long time ago. And then that makes them sellable. But there's room for all sorts of, and that's not to say any one particular brand that gets acquired has sold out. But think of it this way, okay? in order for snow to accumulate on the ground, a lot of snow needs to melt first to get the bed of the asphalt just like cold enough, right?
Right.
So that happens over and over again throughout the season. And it's cyclical with businesses. Businesses that raise the game for what now could be considered a little bit more commercialized specialty coffee, they're going to be the status quo for new coffee professionals who want to up the ante. And their comparison might not be anymore Starbucks. Their comparison might be a La Colombe,
Yep.
or even a Blue Bottle or something like that.
Mhm.
And if that's what they want to do better than, awesome, because they're actually pretty decent brands. You know, Blue Bottle's great. Blue
Yeah.
Bottle has amazing coffees, but they're owned by Nestle,
Right.
right? And so there's a lot of, I think, more ethical concerns that I hear conversations happening around when it comes to like, well, who's Nestle? They want to own all the water in the world and, you know, whatever else. But if you just look at what it's doing for coffee in general, and it's creating a baseline of understanding of coffee that the rest of the industry can either be inspired to do similar or do different. And that's as simple as it gets. And you could either busy yourself creating, or you could just stay on the sidelines and critique as, you know, long as you want. But
Mhm.
unless you're willing to kind of like put your foot in the ring, then I don't know. You know, there's a lot that can be said for good that can come from mergers and acquisitions. Personally, I feel that the future of the industry is going back to the small operators who have culturally and values rooted operations that have an outsized impact because the diversity of people they collect as customers go out into the world and spread that message. It's not necessary to have 50 shops to spread the message to what maybe 50 shops would spread. Like a potent message spread by one shop could just outperform in influence and impact 50 shops without a message, where it's just utility. It's just coffee, coffee, coffee. We've got really great systems. We've got really great inventories, you know, and all that stuff. But the baristas never look up. They're really stressed out. There's high turnover. But this one shop, even just mentioning it now, like a Brasso or any other that's just focused on you, like really seeing your soul when you're ordering coffee, you know, that changes things way more. It's just not something that you can see on a spreadsheet. So
That's real. I really like your perspective.
mm,
That was phenomenal. The way the coffee industry is going, it always shows me the new heights, like the new possibilities. And people have asked me before, like, oh, what's your exit plan? Would you ever sell your company? And I'm like, man, I have such a hard time with that question because my brand was inspired by my grandfather. Like the guy on the logo is my grandfather. Like I'm like genetically connected to that guy. It's like I'm selling this guy. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to sell the guy's story. It's kind of I'm selling my grandfather's face up. Here's the rights. You know what I mean? I've always thought about that. And my thing is always like coffee. Apparently, last time I heard was like a $500 billion industry, something like that. Right? Rough number around there.
something, yeah.
And some people are just like, man, I want a big pie of that. I want a big chunk. And I'm like, bro, you give me 1% of that, I'll be more than fine. Like, or just 0.5%, a quarter of a percent, 0.001 or some shit. Like, I'll take it. You know what I mean? And my thing is like, a lot of the times everybody wants to be the dominating brand or the company. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I just want to be in the industry. I want to take care of my family, take care of the community, make sure I'm good. And like, I'm good with that. Like, I don't want to go crazy. I don't need $1 billion. I'm not saying if you give me $1 billion, I'm gonna say no now. But I'm saying I don't think that that's gonna be my measure of success. Like I think that's such a far stretch. And like you said, man, it's like you could that impact of one shop versus 50. That's kind of my style. You know what I mean? When I see people getting into the industry, like when I started, I was very fortunate because I had technology.
Yeah.
Your podcast was on Apple, and guess what? On Apple Podcast, I could listen for free. There was no financial barrier for me to listen to the education you were giving. When it came to SEA classes, that was a different story because it was, it was expensive. So my route was, let me read these books. about green coffee, about roasting, watch YouTube, listen to podcasts. That was my intro to the industry. I had actually never worked in coffee. I was in college and I just had this idea and I was curious and I had time at night after I did my homework. You know what I mean?
Nice.
And then that's how I got into it. And it's been a grind, it's been a journey, man. But it just shows me so much potential in the coffee world. At the end of the day, everything always goes back to the farmers, you know. So it's like, how do we highlight their stories? How do we make sure they're better? And it really sucks that the people who make the least amount of money in the whole supply chain is where it starts.
You know, it's funny because if you are focused on the idea of staying small, it's interesting because the argument for
Hmm.
larger companies is doing more good for more farmers. So it's good that those larger companies exist
Hmm.
and that the smaller ones exist. We serve different functions. Um, I really, as somebody who is a head judge for latte art and have competed, and then I'm hearing you talk about this idea that we want simplicity. I want something that's like soul satisfying, simple. Want to honor the legacy of my grandfather. Want to just represent the Dominican Republic well. I want to
Hmm.
do this and not be like, I don't want to be a billionaire necessarily. And frankly, if you just look at most billionaires, you're just like, I really don't want to be a billionaire. It's like, that is weird.
Right.
How much do you need to be like
Yeah,
satisfied?
yeah,
And
yeah.
why do people retire from Wall Street and go, open a hobby farm in Vermont? Like, did it cost you that much of your life and that much to live simply? You could have just done that. You
Right,
didn't
right,
have to
right.
be,
You could
to
have
trade it.
you
Yeah.
could have been doing that the whole time.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a deep insecurity of ours that we have to like almost get out in fits and starts by comparing ourselves and getting into shark infested waters and stuff and just test ourselves and seeing if we can do it. And it's all sort of like a personal journey. And it's not really even about the business. It's more like, well, I have to prove it to myself that I can do this. And sometimes that actually ruins the business. And we don't even realize that it's happening.
That's crazy.
Right. So when we talk about competitions, um, you think about what gets poured on the bar most of the time in coffee shops: hearts, rosettas. I start to get worried when people are doing
Seahorse.
seahorses on production bars. I'm like, dude, just serve the coffee.
Right.
Like, I almost feel like I want to return it. If I ever get a seahorse, I'm like, no, I don't eat like fish. I'm not gonna just pour me a heart.
Right.
I'm all about that organ meat. But the idea is I want simplicity in that service, because then it's like an ego trip. Like, people even like taking photos of their latte art behind the bar before they serve a customer. Like,
You
it's
just
like some cringy stuff, because
yeah.
we're such a navel gazing industry, right? That is so bent on higher levels, solely for the level, not for what it will do. Like,
That's crazy.
why? Unto what? Ask yourself a question. Everything you do, unto what? What is this going to do? Why am I doing it? And you might not like the answer. And I think that's why we don't ask it a lot of times. And so we just keep on accumulating titles and competitions and metrics. And then one day the pandemic happens. And then a lot of shops, there's a shop that I know of that had all of it: wholesale, competition level roasted coffee, bar, music, cocktail bar at night. It was amazing. When the pandemic happened, they stripped everything back to just roasting, closed the bar, opened a small bar with a very limited menu with just 3 people working. It was really just the family. And the reason why is because they felt that they were sort of held hostage by the success of their business that they started, because they thought they needed to do those things. And now that you've got them, you've got to maintain them. So you just keep doing the job, and you're like, how do I stop? I don't know how to stop.
That's
In the
real.
pandemic, the great resignation, as they call it, people stopped wanting to be in the coffee industry. They're like, why am I doing this? I don't like it. And then we're like, oh my gosh, people are leaving. And it's actually a good thing, because wherever that person ends up may be a little bit more of a mindful and intentional uh, place for them, and they'll do a better job there. So I don't think we're out of the woods yet, but that was actually a blessing in disguise for some people. It was really terrible for so many, but there are some people that were like, I'm actually happy that this happened because it gave us a excuse to stop long enough to say we really don't like what we're doing right now, and let's get smaller and let's get happier.
I'm so glad you're saying all these things because at some point in my journey, I mean, early on, it was very like, okay, I cannot afford some of these competitions,
Mm,
or some of these classes, and people throw things around, and I get it, I respect it, you earned it, but some of these things cost money, and time, and flying somewhere, and hotels and stuff like that, and I respect it. But I didn't have that financial support from any angle, so I just had to figure it out. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I agree, man. Like in terms of the menu and what we do, like I really want to make things simple. You know what I mean? It's like when I go to a shop and they have different sizes for a macchiato, I'll be confused. But I respect it. That's your style. You know what I mean? Like it just is what it is.
Yeah.
But that's not my style, and I like doing things a little bit more simpler and things like that. So I'm really glad you said that because a lot of the things that I do is making it simple. And even with my origins, like right now, the main one is Dominican. We have Colombian, Brazilian, and Costa Rican. And I've always been thinking, like, for the last year or so, I'm like, okay, which one's gonna go? Definitely not Dominican, but one of them
Mm,
like has to go.
okay.
And then one more might have to go. And then we could bring it on as a limited coffee, instead of having it year round. Because when I started in this industry, I purposely started with Costa Rican coffee because that's what I could have access to.
Right.
And then it was Colombian and then Brazilian and then stuff like that. As I learned throughout, like, okay, how to source from different importers and whatever and whatnot. And then later in time, I honed into what I wanted, what I started this for, the
Okay.
mission. And it was like, I just want to be like that one roaster that represents Dominican coffee. Like
And so
I just really want to focus on that.
all your stuff that you want to do now is stuff that you want to do. You
Right.
want to get to where this is something I have it because I want it,
Right.
not because I have to have it.
Right. And it's like, yeah, like everybody's talking about Panama and the geishas and the Colombia this and
Right.
this that and the anaerobics. I get that. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But we just got an aged natural coffee out of DR like last year.
Oh, well.
Great, let's have that. You know what I mean? Okay, we have a red honey out of the DR. Great. I have, you know what I mean? Like I'll have that. And I feel like we're just trying to keep up with all these hypes in the industry. And it's like, yo, bro, what do you want to do? So I'm glad you said that because that's kind of how I've been approaching the industry. Where it's like I'm happy doing this. And when I talk to you about it, you're gonna see how excited and passionate I am about this one thing because of the way I talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Simplicity is absolutely underrepresented in the industry. You go on coffee boards online where there's business owners that have like Facebook groups and stuff.
Hmm.
And it is just trend after trend, question after question about 18 different kinds of bubble teas and Lotus energy drinks and Red Bull spritzers and, 35 different flavors of sugar-free syrups. And they do it because they just want their customers to have options. And they feel like that just all that stuff will excite people when it just scares the crap out of them. And they'll order the most safe thing, which is either what they've always ordered or what's the cheapest or the simplest to get out of that pressure cooker
Hmm.
because we're not thinking empathetically to the customer. We just had a shift break episode. We do 10-minute episodes or so on Thursdays called Shift Break. This one is called Trends You Can Ignore. Uh, and so maybe it's not clickbait, but it really does tell you how to know which ones to ignore. And I did it because
I
Coffee
would have
Fest is
clicked
coming
that.
up,
Hmm.
and all the marketers and all the salespeople are unpacking their vans right now, with their brochures. And I feel like a hypocrite because I have business cards for my consulting stuff, right? But I'm also the one telling people like, why do you need this? What is it that you think this is going to do in your shop? Well, they gave me a statistic that customers are really buying all of these flavors, like unique flavors like strawberry matcha and all this other stuff. And if customers are buying it, then I want to have it from my customers. Well, there's two different things going on. Customers in aggregate that salespeople use to tell you that there's a trend doesn't mean customers locally for you. It doesn't mean it's going to work where you are. It just means that it's a national trend or a global trend. So we have all these local businesses basing their business models on global trends, and they're so surprised when it doesn't work out because they're not studying their community, they're not studying their own why, and they're unwilling to really keep it simple because just like a barista who thinks that the answer is always another staff member, like, what can we do to, well, more baristas, put more baristas behind the bar.
Yeah.
Owners are always like, well, maybe we need new menu items, more paninis, more, more muffins.
Right.
And then customers will come in, and it just has the opposite effect. You get less efficient with more baristas sometimes, right? And you become less attractive with more stuff, right? On your menu, because customers don't know who you are. And it's kind of like you don't either. So
Yeah, my style is like I found the lane and I picked it and I stayed in it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like we're probably gonna have like a bacon, egg, and cheese on the menu
nice.
because it's such a Bronx thing. I don't know. Like I grew up here. Like, like I had that for breakfast in high school. It's like a thing. It's a New York City thing. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And then we might have mashed plantains. It's like mango,
Yeah.
and it'll have like salami and fried cheese and like an egg. Because that's like what I used to eat in the country in the Dominican Republic before we hit the farms. So it's like that's just like my lane. Like I'm just curating how I grew up between here and there, and like this is like 2 menu items, and we have some
Yes.
more, but that's my lane. You know, like when you walk in there, you're gonna be like, yep, this is like a Dominican owned
Yes.
coffee shop.
Ah,
You know what I mean?
You are the future.
You feel me?
That's right.
and we definitely gonna have some avocado toast because guess what? I have avocados in my backyard where I'm from.
Oh yes, the original avocado toast.
The original. You know what I mean? Like my grandfather that was his breakfast. Like he just didn't smash them up, but he would just throw them in the bread, bite them up, put a little salt and pepper and a lime, and it was a movie.
Yeah.
It was great. It was great. Man, it's so good that we got to talk about the shop stuff. In terms of people starting up a shop now, like 2024, it's kind of scary, man, because I started working on this concept 2018, and here we are, 2024, and time flies. Time flies. What people approach me all the time about opening up a coffee shop, do's and don'ts.
Do's and don'ts.
Yeah, in 2024. Well, you mentioned a lot already.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that one of the things we'll say this weekend, because
Would you say they should work in coffee before they get in it?
Oh yeah, thank you. That is absolutely the case. And there have been a couple of people that have called me. They say, "Hey, I heard you do consulting. I want to open a coffee shop." And I say, just from the vibe I'm getting from them, I feel like there's this attitude that's very simple. And I'll tell them that. Well, like, why would I be a consultant unless I'm just going to tell them, straight what's going on? And a couple of them have actually took me up on the idea of working in coffee. I said, look, if this is going to be your life, because you're going to work full time, more than full time in this place, why can't you work part time right now? Doesn't make sense for you to say, oh, it's too inconvenient. You know how inconvenient it's going to be once you open your coffee shop? Like, go work in a coffee bar. It doesn't even matter if it's a good one, to be honest with you. When I first, I play guitar, when I first learned how to play guitar, it was the worst. It was hard. It's painful. The teachers aren't always great, but you get the feel of being in the space. And at least it makes you a more empathetic and a leader. It makes you a little bit more seasoned so that lessons you learn when you open your coffee shop will actually stick. There's like primer. You don't want to paint without primer.
Yeah.
That's people open a coffee shop without priming. And that's working in coffee shops. Some people can't do that. And for those people, I say, start going to farmers markets. I hope that everybody eventually has some kind of a mobile expression of their cafe.
Yeah.
At a farmer's market or something, a small 1 group, a 2 group, ideally. It doesn't have to be super expensive. Get out there on the weekends. This guy named Jim, and I forget his last name, but he runs a place in Cleveland called Heartwood. He was a full-time plumber. He roasted in his garage while still working full-time plumbing, opened a coffee shop and did roasting in the garage while still full-time plumbing, and eventually convinced himself that maybe I should give up the full-time gig. And it worked. There's always a workaround, but people want to make it black and white.
Right.
And you can start small, start slow, learn the lessons, and become the kind of person that can handle the success that you think you want. The other thing I would say is good coffee is so available right now. Choosing the right wholesale partner is really important. If you're going to roast yourself, then you have to really learn how to roast well. That's going to take you at least a year or two to get a handle on that. That's why you start small. I'm sure you can attest to this. But when it comes to starting up a coffee shop, you need to focus on the people more than the coffee. You need to focus on who is the right person to work in this cafe. How am I going to lead them? What am I going to do with my time? How am I going to speak to them? And how am I going to allow them to know it's okay to speak to me? And that communication and culture and uh, just human relationships, those are the most important things that people will say, hey, I'm getting ready to open in like a month and I need to start hiring. I'm like, dude, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. You're probably going to lose these people. You might get lucky. Like there just happen to be like there's a vein, like you strike gold. There's like this vein of really good baristas that happen to be around.
Mhm.
But eventually they're going to figure out that you just kind of like went off half cocked here and they might leave. So if you get an idea that you want to start a coffee shop and you're a year out, maybe, I would say give yourself at least a year to open when you get the idea, if not more. Start right away with your values. And I say values, I mean, not the mission. We want to serve, specialty coffee to the community that loves to drink it. Whatever, you know, I'm talking about things like if you tell me it's important that we have integrity. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean on Wednesday at 3 p.m. when there's a lull and, you can clock out a little bit early or late or what does it mean for your baristas when you communicate integrity and you're not telling them that means when you underfill a beverage, you have to fill it all the way up. You can't serve it underfilled. That's the application of the value. And if you haven't put the values in place and then applied them to the real work of the coffee bar, then you really don't have values that are usable. And you don't know who is going to work for you because these people need to have already had experience living out those values before they come to you, or else they're going to simply try on these values for the first time in order to keep their job with you. And that's no good. So if they say, well, I can try teamwork, they'll tell you, yes, I'm a team player, but they don't know what that means. So when they come in, they've got to have already had experience in jobs where they can prove, I am a team player, I have integrity, I love people, and here's the proof. I'm self-aware. I am able to correct my mistakes. It comes down to people. Get good coffee, buy good equipment, build out the space, but don't let those things be distractions that kind of push you to the very edge of opening the coffee shop without focusing on the people.
Man, this is definitely the episode I'm gonna tell people to listen to when they ask me, I want to open up a coffee shop. In terms of the shows like Coffee Fest, Specialty Coffee Association, Expo, do you think that's a great place for people who want to start a coffee shop to go to, or is that overwhelming and they're just a bunch of people selling you stuff that you have no knowledge to evaluate? Really,
it's a good thing to be saturated in the industry. I think if you go into it knowing that people are really trying to get you to buy what they're selling,
right? I think people forget that part.
Yeah. just go in knowing, what's the, like when you're at a Midway in the fair or something, don't make eye contact sometimes. It's like, but if you want to engage,
Right.
take the business card. You don't have to respond to the email. They are going to follow up, hopefully, if they're good. Right. And sometimes you're going to meet people that actually have something you want and need.
Right. And you're going to love when they reach out.
Yeah, exactly. But you need to be prepared. I mean, the information's online. Go figure out what you want to listen to, who you want to talk to, what products you're interested in, and why, and then execute your plans. Like go into the grocery store. Don't go hungry.
Right.
Because you're going to buy stuff you don't need.
Right. Yeah, that's funny. That's a good way to look at it.
But Coffee Fest is wonderful. It's they started in '92. And it's been, 30 years, over 30 years, they've been doing that. And I've been involved for 20 of those or so. And it's accessible when you compare it to other trade shows.
Right.
Free lectures, panels, accessibly priced workshops and things like that. Like I do a systems workshop for how to develop systems in your coffee shop, and it's like 2 hours. And I don't know what it is. It might be like 50 or 70 or something like that per person. That's nothing.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
That's not bad at all.
You got somebody with a lot of experience giving you all that game for that price.
And
unheard of.
And it's practical knowledge.
So you guys spend it on drinks.
and it's how you take advantage of the opportunities that you have. But the industry is, I say, like a pantry, but you don't go to the pantry and just choose everything. You choose what you need for the meal you're making. And the industry has the stuff you need. It's just what stuff? What do you need? So that's where I come in. Like I might help people decide, what do you need? What's the next thing to, decide in your business? If you have a sticky situation in your cafe, you don't know what the next right decision is, we work through it. We coach it out. I ask you some questions. I push back on some ideas or assumptions that you have about maybe you think you're approachable, but I'm here to tell you that actually you're not very approachable. And only because I've lived it myself, like half of the stuff I talk about are things that I have completely failed in over my 25 years of coffee, which is fun to talk about now. It wasn't fun then.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah, it's not fun to make a manager cry or, to get fired and all that stuff.
Where do you think the industry is going right now? I feel like it's growing so fast. There's so much technology happening all at once. There's all these concepts coming out. Now we have these coffee shops it's like zero humans. It's just robots doing everything. I'm like, what is happening right now? Life is crazy.
What do I think about like AI coffee or
an AI cup of coffee?
Automation and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that we have, what is the word for it? The technocracy that people are talking about, like the rule of technology in the average life of humans, because we kind of worship at the altar of convenience as though that is going to bring fulfillment. And so because we have businesses, we need to justify the existence of the business. That business, therefore, will innovate. Even if the industry doesn't need it, they will tell you that you need it. So now if they can do it, you should have it. But that's not always the case. But we are conditioned. We are really good at being marketed to and following through and buying that stuff. It's just one click away. It's in your Prime, favorites or whatever. It's delivered to your door. So we've kind of set ourselves up to accept just unchecked innovation. With innovation on what? What was the problem to begin with? For example, my hotel right now has this little Mr. Coffee in it, right? That, how long that's been around?
Yep, I agree. I've always wondered, man, they still got that in the hotel rooms?
Yeah, it's been around a long time, but we act like we dropped out of the sky like a gift from God and saying like, no, pour overs, or no, pour overs have been around for a while. Melita, back in the, 80s?
Yep.
The innovations we have today are not really solving real problems. They are solving problems for the companies that innovate. The problem is we don't have enough sales. We don't have enough market share. We need to get attention on us. Let's innovate something that solves a problem that actually doesn't really exist, that couldn't be solved with a much more simple and less costly solution.
That's real.
There's almost no reason why a customer-facing specialty coffee shop should have a super automatic espresso machine, for example. That's just maybe a bit of a controversial statement. You can have it. Can you have it? Yeah, buy it. Okay, fine, you bought it. Do you absolutely need it? No. Will it solve your problems with labor or with speed of service or anything like that? Not any better than what you could have done otherwise.
Right.
The problem is that we have outsourced intentionality to technology. And so they say, well, we're going to free the barista up. When you say the super automatic on the espresso machine or on the bar, we're going to free the barista up to focus on the customer. Now, guess what's going to happen? If I'm freed up to focus on the customer, we never asked ourselves the question, does the customer really want the barista to focus on them?
Right.
Doing what? Staring at you.
30 seconds. Oh, your drink is ready.
Yeah, exactly. Do you feel connected with right now? Sorry, the machine's doing the work. Let's chat. Like, we don't want that much interaction. So my biggest issue is things are being sold with this idea that like you are going to save money on training. You're going to get up and going quicker. And the default mode for a lot of owners, because of the insecurities we talked about before, is if it can be made easier and I can erase the liability, number one in my business, the first liability I think of is my people. That's already a bad way of thinking about people. So you're actually encouraging this natural kind of enmity that happens between owners and staff because they view them as liabilities, not as investments.
Right.
So you say, well, you're going to save money on training. Well, you still have to train people. And we're actually encouraging owners now to pay their baristas less or hire fewer baristas and have the machines do it, which is going to incentivize just focusing less on people. We want to invest more in people. You can train your baristas very well on semi-automatic espresso machines with flow meters and all that stuff. We have enough technology right now. We've got enough training. We've got enough information. We're crying out loud. We have YouTube. We have podcasts.
Right.
We don't need more stuff. We just need more us. That's it. We just need more connection between ourselves, not Bluetooth connection to get rid of people in the process. So whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel pretty strongly about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I feel that. I agree, man. I agree. I feel like to a certain extent, people remove like the humanity out of coffee sometimes, and that to me is like that was the most important part after the coffee. You know what I mean? And that's a big thing. But talking about that, man, what's your favorite cup of coffee? Like, what do you typically get when you go to a shop?
I get espresso.
Espresso?
A shot of espresso. Double shot. And
what's your take on shops that? Because like I've been to shops that give me like sparkling water with it. Some don't, some do, some don't. And I'm like,
I really don't like sparkling water with espresso. I don't need a palate cleanser.
When did that come a thing? To me,
competitions.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, the little planks of wood that you get right with the thing, that's competition.
Oh,
right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, because when you did a competition, it's okay. We want to elevate coffee to a culinary art, and so we're going to present. And what do they do at present? There's only so many options. You go to the restaurant store and you look at it and say, well, what do I do? So we started putting spoons and cups and napkins and planks and things like that, slates.
Interesting.
And so now they just like they're a trapping of the industry that serve some kind of a function, but a lot of sparkling water kind of leaves an off taste. There's a little bit of a bitterness to it to me. So I'd rather just have still water if I was going to cleanse my palate. But I don't go in for it that much. I'll tell the barista sometimes, like, I don't need the water. I just want to take the espresso and I want to drink the espresso. And I like classic espresso. I like a chocolatey, fudgy, nutty, or even earthy, sometimes medium darkish coffee as espresso. I enjoy, like I had this whoosh whoosh at Watch House, who just opened a week ago on Fifth Ave. I had that this afternoon. It's amazing. And it had just enough cocoa in it for me to be like, I can taste the pear and the high end stuff, but it's anchored. It's anchored right here. Yeah. So my favorite cups of coffee tend to be pretty balanced. Lots of good sweet coffees that are balanced come from like Colombia. I've been enjoying a lot of that. And then just old school espresso blends. I've got a flare, just like hand crank on the bar home.
Those are nice.
Yeah, I like them.
Is Colombia your favorite origin?
Colombia, my favorite origin.
Do you have like a top 3?
If I was going to narrow it down, it would have to be when it's on and it's really on, Papua New Guinea. Colombia seems to be producing a ton of just really just on the mark coffees, and then just a really great Guatemalan coffee has been on the bar at home. But the blends that tend to be the old school blends, they follow the old rule of coffee, the blends, of espresso blends, which was like the Sumatra, Brazil, Ethiopia. 3 beans, the Brazil natural, pulp natural, and then you have the blueberry Sidamos and Ethiopians, and then you've got the you can have a Guatemala in there, or you can have a Sumatra as a really earthy coffee. And with processing the way it is now in coffee, a lot of these origins are starting to, I don't want to say taste similar, but they're starting to have a little bit more pick of how they're represented in the industry, which some people will be upset about because they're like, well, taste of place. Sumatras are earthy. And well, there's a lot of Sumatran coffees and Indonesian coffees now coming out that taste exactly like what you would get from Colombia. And is that a loss? Maybe for nostalgia. Is it a gain for that area because it's maybe more marketable, or at least they have more control over how they're represented in the greater industry to consumers? Oh yeah. That's the biggest thing happening right now in coffee is in-country consumption in producing countries of the product. So not all the best coffee going out.
Yep.
Brazilian coffee bars and roasteries serving Brazilian coffee to Brazilians, right? And not shipping it out all over the place, right? Colombia is the same, and you get that all over. And that's really encouraging. We've had a lot of those folks that represent that in-country consumption and that industry on the show. And those are some of my favorite ones.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I gotta see that. The last question to close out is pretty interesting because we're living in a very social media heavy world. I'm like trying to limit how much social media I consume right now because it takes so much out of me.
Okay.
But we on there. And I've noticed this thing right now. It's happening. It's a lot of people creating content, a lot of content around coffee. And it's a lot of people who are not in coffee going to different coffee shops and trying out shops and giving them a rating and posting it. And one thing I've noticed is there's a lot of inconsistency because they'll go to different shops and get different drinks. You know what I mean? And if it was up to me, it's like I will get the same drink every time and figure out what does that drink, what should that one drink taste like, and then use that as a measure.
Okay.
So like, what is your opinion on that? Because so many people right now are just judging coffee, and I'm like, man, that's so bad. Because if you give it a bad review and you're not eligible to judge this, you might do something bad for that shop.
Oh man, maybe I have a bit of a contrarian view here, but I fully accept that Yelp and other places like that incentivize asinine reviews of coffee shops. Like, would have been 5 stars, but I was late for work, or because I came just before close or something. It was their fault,
right?
I don't know. And so they have this platform to express themselves, and they don't take time to talk to the owner, to send an email, to just let somebody know. Now, whose fault is that? Speaking of innovations that we could be focusing on besides, robot arms, making it better for the customer, easier for the customer to give feedback on their experience and tell them it's okay to do that, because we are very inaccessible when it comes to communication. So they don't know who to talk to.
Right.
They might not know who the owner is. The barista is just aloof. I'm not going to talk to that person because actually I wanted to talk about them because it was such a bad experience.
Right.
Who do I talk to? And so they go onto Yelp because it's the last place they have. And so a conscientious owner, instead of getting all upset about it, which is upsetting, I get it, but I've been able to get ratings that are bad from cafes that I've managed removed simply by being super gracious to people and saying, I want to hear more. I want to comp their drinks, of course. And maybe there's something that they've done that is not great. This doesn't work with people that are just awful people. Those people can just pound sand. I'm like, get out of here. So I think more than likely the person is just frustrated and may have been dealing with this problem for a long time. And now it's finally just, I'm going to post because it's been too long. And there's a ton of those people out there. Most of them just don't come back to your coffee shop. Some of them post on Yelp. So there's this 5 star, 5 star, amazing. I love everything they do. And then there's like a 1 star, 1 star, 1 star. It's not a lot of middle ground here, right?
Mhm.
So we have people who are your fans, and then we have opportunities to improve. So I enjoy the idea that people give you feedback that's negative about your business, because who's going to do that?
Right.
You know, no
Not your,
one.
not your
hardly
mom.
any- No, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Your friends, your family, they're not going to be like, listen. I think that was just over extracted,
Yeah.
or like it's very inconsistent depending on who's working. So if they give that to you, it's a gift. It's a gift. And so I guess your question is like, how do we deal with people who are unqualified to judge our coffee? I think that they are very qualified to judge our coffee, um, more so than we are almost sometimes, because they drink it more than us. You don't drink the mochas you're going to make as much as the mocha drinker drinks your mochas.
Facts.
They are an expert.
Facts. They're
And so
they're the ones paying for
if
it.
they tell you something's wrong with a mocha, you better believe them, because who else on your staff is just pounding mochas like that? Nobody. So I think that's a gift, and we don't see it that way. We just create this us versus them thing, and people
Yeah.
suck and support us because we're local. That's dumb. Like,
Yeah.
why? Because you're local? No.
Right.
Support you because, it's a give and take. You do well, we support. There's only so much that my charity is going to do. Eventually, I'm going to secretly go to another coffee shop because I've got feelings, and you keep hurting them. So even though I believe in what you're doing, I'm going to moonlight with the place that actually makes good coffee,
Mhm.
and that hurts. So that's kind of my take on it. Is we can adjust to the way we see the customer as a reflection of what's more true about our business than what we assume is true,
Mhm.
because we're too close to it. We can't see the forest for the trees. The customer is a little bit more likely to give you a dose of truth.
Yeah.
And your baristas can do the same thing if you just sit there and ask them, how are we doing? What can we fix? You know why we don't ask them? Because we know we'll get an answer. We kind of don't want it.
And we gotta do something about it.
Yeah, I'm going to do something about it. So that's the point is, we're given a gift of being able to refine our concepts via lots of different relationships that we have. And it's a generous view of humanity, a generous view of our work. I think that makes a successful coffee shop. And stay positive, stay cheerful. I don't know. That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, any coffee drinkers, keep it real with your local shops, and that's what it is. Yeah. Thank you for coming, man. It was a pleasure.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for being a goat, man. I am blessed with your presence.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Thank you for coming, man. All right.